So for the past couple of weeks, I've been testing out the new 540Hz monitor from Zowie. This will be the second monitor using this insane 1080p 540Hz panel. The first one was from ASUS. I reviewed that one a few months ago, and I've actually still been using that one as my main gaming display, despite all of these insane gaming monitors coming out, like 360Hz OLED and 4K 240Hz. Truly amazing monitors in their own right, but I just cannot give up that feeling of gaming at 540Hz, especially for the competitive esports style games. If you are playing a game that can drive that amount of frames, it is honestly kind of addicting. Like, it is kind of creepy as well how lifelike and true those animations look, how close they look to real life. So then, here we have it, the new XL2586X from Zowie. I know a lot of people are looking forward to this one. Again, it's the exact same 540Hz fast TN panel from the ASUS PG24. It's currently the highest refresh rate panel that you can buy at the moment. And aside from OLED, it actually gives you the fastest LCD response times as well. Now, if you currently own a Zowie monitor, you might notice that this one looks a little bit different. And look, Zowie didn't really need to redesign or refresh their exterior, but the updates that they've made here are definitely quite welcome. We've got a couple like slightly different things, like the ports exiting out the back now and a different height adjustment mechanism. The main advantage of this new redesign is actually the stand. It's even smaller than the 2566K, and it sits further back away from your keyboard and mouse. Of course, you can just use a monitor arm, but now you almost just don't need to. For some reason though, they still insist on using extremely thick bezels for the display. These ones are actually even thicker than the 2566K, which is quite odd. And then turning it on for the first time, being a TN panel, you expect it to be really bad, but this one is actually extremely good. This is something that I really tried to drive home in my review of the ASUS PG24. This is an extremely good looking panel. Most IPS displays have a contrast ratio of around 1000 to 1, but this is a bit more punchy at 1400 to 1. Very decent range of colors too. I measured 92.5% of DCI-P3. In other words, you can really push the color vibrance on this thing quite high before you see any color banding or blobbing. Speaking of color vibrance, I absolutely love the built-in slider in the OSD that you get on Zowie monitors for this. On the 2586X, you actually have individual color adjustments too. So if you want player outlines in Overwatch, for example, to just be a touch more vibrant, you can individually boost that red vibrance up a little bit more. To be honest, this is how I found myself playing on this most of the time, and it worked really well. Now, the pixel response times of these ultra high refresh rate monitors are extremely important. If the pixels can't switch color fast enough to keep up with the screen that is constantly refreshing, especially at 540Hz, simply put, you'll get ghosting, smearing, just a really soft and blurry gaming experience. Now, unfortunately, this is not an OLED panel. We don't get instant 0 millisecond response times here, but it is still insanely quick. In fact, this is the fastest non-OLED panel that I've tested. You have quite a few different response time modes here, which Zowie calls AMA, and if you really want to fine tune things, you actually have a slider from 0 to 30, which I think is super cool. As usual, the higher you set this AMA or response time overdrive mode, the faster the response time will be, but the more overshoot or inverse ghosting that you'll get, which you definitely don't want. So long story short, setting the AMA level to around 20, I think is the sweet spot for most games out there. It still looks extremely clean with a really fast response time. 25 is probably as high as you want to go and seems to be in line with what Zowie are using with their premium preset, which you can just use instead if you want. Either 25 or premium, you can get an average response time of just 1.1 milliseconds. Basically the same result as the 540Hz from ASUS, although that monitor does get a little bit brighter and a bit warmer, which I think is what's responsible for the small difference that we're seeing here. The liquid crystals in the display just respond better when they're a bit warmer. The most important thing though is what this actually looks like when you're playing, and the answer is incredibly good. Those ultra fast response times combined with a 540Hz refresh rate, let's just say if you're missing any shots, it's not because of the monitor. Extremely minimal ghosting here at 540Hz with no noticeable artifacting. Now, something else new on the 2586X is DIAC 2, which is Zowie's motion blur reduction technology, which works by temporarily turning off the backlight between frames. And the way this stuff works is not by filtering or buffering. There's no input lag added here. There's no processing of the frames. It works actually just by tricking your eyes. Normally, every frame is held on on screen until the next one is ready. The motion over time then looks something like this, which our eyes don't really like. This is why even with a 0 millisecond response time OLED, you will still perceive some natural motion blur. But by turning off the backlight, essentially removing that last portion of the frame from your vision, your eyes now perceive this movement over time to be more real, more linear, and more clear. Usually with these backlight strobing implementations like ULMB, ELMB, Diac, they're all kind of the same thing, you usually do notice a big difference. On the 360Hz PG27AQN, for example, ULMB2 is black magic. It is extremely worth enabling. It really sharpens things up quite a bit. Same with Diac Plus on the 240Hz XL2546K, absolutely night and day difference there. But at 540Hz, it's already so damn clear that there's just not much improvement to be made. Honestly, it does look a little bit sharper, and if we compare it to the 2566K, Diac 2 is better than Diac Plus with less double imaging. If you can consistently drive 540 FPS, I guess it's worth enabling, but the real thing that you're getting here is the insanely quick 540Hz panel. That is definitely the main ingredient that makes this monitor so insane to play on. It is so fast, so clear and punchy. It's actually nice for once not to have to rely on backlight strobing eye trickery to make that motion appear clearer than it is. With this and the Asus 540Hz, you just see every frame as clear as real life. As for which one I would go for between this and the Asus 540Hz, well, there are some big differences between them. Probably the biggest one is that the Asus one has a physical G-Sync and reflex module, which apart from giving you real-time latency analysis with your PC, it can actually tune the response time and overdrive level as the refresh rate varies and decreases. So if you're someone who commonly plays at 240Hz, maybe 144 as well, you will technically get better response time and overdrive performance at those lower refresh rates than you will get on the Zowie, which is optimized for a 540Hz experience. But then in terms of ergonomics, I mean, Zowie are just making the best, most ergonomic monitors in the space. They are really set up as a proper gaming peripheral. And look, even if you put this on a monitor arm, there are other things too, like the color vibrant slider, the fact that the OSD is so quick to enable, you can switch profiles like extremely quickly. I don't know, it just feels nicer and cleaner and simpler to use. I know a lot of people and the companies as well probably want me to talk about Diac 2 versus ULMB 2, but honestly guys, it is not a big difference. Both of them work functionally the same with, the backlight strobing on and off. The result is not too different either. And I really don't think it's a big deal on these monitors when the default 540Hz experience is so insane. You just almost don't need these things. There is a bit of a brightness difference as well. The Asus is probably the better pick if you game in a super bright setup. It can go up to like over 400 nits, but honestly, the new 2586X is totally fine here as well with over 350. I think what it should come down to mostly is the price. And Zowie don't really have a price for this one yet. They said they're kind of still figuring that one out. The Asus at the moment is about $900, and I figured since this one does not have a physical G-Sync and reflex module, it should be about $100 cheaper. Now, I'm not implying that it's $100 worse, but not having that hardware and not having that lower refresh rate optimized experience, yeah, I think the Zowie is a little bit stripped down, which some people might prefer. Especially because if you're interested in this ultra high refresh rate experience, you might actually want to wait for the 480Hz OLEDs that are coming out in the second half of this year. Because as much as I love 540Hz, 1080p is hard to live with on a day-to-day basis. Like if this is going to be your one and only display, 1440p is miles better for that. And I think for 480Hz OLED, you're still going to get that lifelike smoothness experience that you get here too. So as for the new Zowie, I mean, it is pretty much everything that I hoped it was. After gaming on the 540Hz Asus for a few months now, I was really hoping that Zowie would be every bit as impressive, and it easily is. They're both extremely OP gaming monitors for competitive FPS style games. When you can see this many frames, when you can see every tiny movement and strafing animation of an enemy target, yeah, it does legitimately feel like an advantage. For me, it is hard to consider a higher resolution display for these esports games until I get that same feeling there too. But yeah, let me know what you think of this one down below. I think if it was my money and if I was choosing between this one and the Asus, and this one was $100 cheaper, I would probably go for this one. But now it is up to Zowie to make this a competitively priced option as well.